The apex predator of Calyx Prime froze mid-hunt, abandoning prey it had stalked for 3 planetary cycles because Sarah Jackson walked past wearing sneakers and a hoodie. Dr. Zelak stared at his monitoring array, all 4 of his optical organs dilating in confusion. The Void Stalker, a creature that had once depopulated an entire moon before capture, had just retreated into the farthest corner of its reinforced containment cell. Not in response to a threat, not because of a sonic deterrent or electrical barrier activation. It had simply stopped. Commander Kael'thas, Zilax's voice cracked slightly over the comm system. We have a situation in Predator Wing 7. According to YouTube analytics, 99.6% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Define situation, Doctor. The station commander's response was immediate, clipped with the authority of someone who'd managed the galaxy's most dangerous predator research facility for 12 cycles. The Void Stalker just aborted its breach attempt. Silence stretched across the channel, then aborted. Retreated fully into its containment. Vitals show extreme stress response, but it's moving away from the compromised barrier. Zilax pulled up the security footage, rewinding 30 seconds. Here. The breach alarm triggered at 14:47 station time. The stalker was 3 meters from freedom when... He watched his commander's expression shift through the video feed as Sarah Jackson entered the frame, walking down the adjacent corridor with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done this route 1,000 times. She was eating an apple, checking something on her datapad, completely oblivious to the fact that 1 wall away, the galaxy's most efficient killing machine had just abandoned its escape because she was nearby. "That's our human maintenance technician," Kael'thas said slowly. "Yes, sir." "She's not even in the same room." "No, sir. She's not armed." "She's carrying a coffee thermos, sir." Kael'thas leaned forward, mandibles clicking in the way that indicated deep thought. "Pull up the containment logs for the past week, all Predator wings, cross-reference with human staff movement patterns." Zilax's manipulators flew across his control interface. The data populated across multiple screens, and what he saw made his respiratory system stutter. Every single time. 47 apex predator species from across known space, each in isolated containment, each representing the pinnacle of their evolutionary tree. And every single one showed identical behavioral patterns when Sarah Jackson's route took her past their sections. Not fear. That would make sense. Fear implied immediate threat response, aggression, territorial behavior. This was recognition. "Get Jotaro up here," Kael'thas ordered, "now." The behavioral specialist arrived within minutes, his reputation for understanding predator psychology making him the natural choice for consultation. Jotaro had studied under the galaxy's premier xenobiologists and had personally cataloged threat response patterns in over 300 species. He watched the compiled footage in silence, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "This is impossible," he finally said. "Define impossible," Zilax replied, pulling up real-time biometric data. "Because I'm watching it happen right now. She's currently in Sector 9. The Krell Deathmaw's heart rate just elevated 30%. She's 3 corridors away." "I'm aware." Jotaro manipulated the holographic display, isolating Sarah's path through the facility. "These predators can't see through walls. Their olfactory ranges are good, but not that precise through environmental barriers. Audio signatures are standard baseline human. There's no logical sensory explanation for advanced recognition." And yet, Kael'thas gestured at the screens where 17 different apex predators were all oriented toward the same direction, tracking Sarah's movement through the station, despite having no direct sensory contact with her. "I need to observe her directly," Jotaro decided. "With the Void Stalker, it's the most dangerous specimen we have. If we're going to understand this, we need controlled observation." Kael'thas was quiet for a moment. "You want to bring a human close to an active Void Stalker containment. The stalker retreated from her once already. It's the safest test subject we have, because apparently it's terrified of maintenance workers. Sarah was genuinely confused when they called her to the command center. Is this about the weird looks? She asked, finishing her apple and tossing the core into a recycling chute. Because I noticed the Grimwald in Section 4 has been acting kind of off lately. Might be sick or something. Zilax exchanged a glance with Jotaro. The Grimwald was a pack-hunting predator from a Deathworld with 1.8 standard gravity. It had once killed its own handlers. Actually, Jotaro said carefully, we'd like your assistance with a behavioral study. Sure, I guess, Sarah shrugged. My shift's almost over, but I can help out. What do you need? Just walk past some containment cells while we monitor the specimens. That's it? That's it, Sarah laughed. Okay, easiest overtime I'll ever make. Lead the way. They set up a monitoring gauntlet. 12 isolated containment cells, each housing a different apex predator species. The research team watched from the observation deck as Sarah entered the corridor, still carrying her coffee thermos, now scrolling through something on her datapad. The Crimson Ripper, a creature that had evolved to hunt in the dark using electromagnetic sense, pressed itself against the far wall of its containment. The Stellar Mauler, an ambush predator with reaction times measured in milliseconds, retreated into its shelter. The Krell Deathmaw, which had once survived sustained plasma fire while killing an entire battalion, made a sound the research team had never heard before. Something between a whimper and a threat display that died halfway, through vocalization. Sarah looked up from her datapad, finally noticing. Okay, that's actually kind of weird. They're all doing the same thing. What do you observe? Jotaro asked through the comm system. They're all moving away from me? Like, specifically away. That one's practically climbing the wall. She pointed at the Deathmaw. Are they all sick? Is there a contamination issue I should know about? Zilax was running full spectrum analysis on Sarah's biosignature. Pheromone profile, baseline human, electromagnetic signature, standard organic readings, audio frequency range, normal conversation and breathing patterns. Thermal signature, 37.2 degrees standard, consistent with human metabolic function. Then what are they detecting? Kael'thas demanded. Jotaro was watching Sarah's movement through the corridor frame by frame. His expression shifted from confusion to dawning horror. Her gait, he whispered. What? Watch how she moves, every step, the rhythm, the efficiency. Jotaro enhanced the footage, overlaying movement analysis. Zero wasted motion, optimal energy conservation, breathing pattern consistent and unlabored despite ascending 3 levels. Heart rate. He pulled up the biometric scan, 47 beats per minute. That's low for a human under observation stress, Zilax noted. That's low for a human doing anything, Jotaro corrected. That's the resting heart rate of an endurance specialist. Sarah had stopped in the middle of the corridor, looking around at the retreating predators with genuine concern. Seriously, guys, should I be worried? Is this a quarantine thing? Miss Jackson, Kael'thas addressed her directly through the comm, do you engage in any specific physical training regimens? She blinked up at the observation window. I do triathlons, run a few marathons a year. Why? The command center went silent. Did she say marathons? Zilax's voice was barely audible. Plural, Jotaro confirmed, his own voice hollow. What's a marathon? One of the junior researchers asked. Jotaro pulled up Earth data on his display. His manipulators trembled slightly as he read. A marathon is a human endurance running event, 42.195 kilometers. Humans run this distance for recreation. That's impossible, the junior researcher said. No species maintains running speed for that distance. That's pursuit-predation distances. Humans do, Jotaro said quietly, and she does it for fun, multiple times per year. Kael'thas was accessing human evolutionary data now, his expression growing more disturbed with each file he opened. Species, human, evolution, Persistence hunting. Primary predation method. Pursue prey until exhaustion leads to collapse. Typical hunt duration, 2 to 8 hours of continuous pursuit. Maximum recorded pursuit, 72 hours. 72 hours, Zilax repeated numbly. That's 3 full planetary rotations. They hunted by just following things? The junior researcher sounded horrified. Until they died. Until they physically collapsed from exhaustion, Jotaro corrected. Then the humans would walk up and kill them at leisure. He looked at Sarah, still standing in the corridor, now doing what appeared to be casual stretches. She's not trying to intimidate them. She's not displaying threat behavior. She's just there, moving with the efficiency of something that never stops coming. Through the observation window, Sarah had gone back to her datapad, completely unaware of the existential crisis unfolding in the command center. The predators recognize the movement signature, Kael'thas said slowly. Millions of years of evolution. Their prey species would have encountered persistence hunters. The gait, the breathing pattern, the presence of something that doesn't chase, it just follows. Forever. But that would mean, Zilax trailed off. It means every predator in this facility is having the same evolutionary response their prey species developed, Jotaro finished. They're not seeing a threat, they're seeing an inevitability. Sarah was getting increasingly confused by the whole situation. She'd been asked to walk past the same containment cells 3 more times, and each time the reaction was identical. The predators, some of the most dangerous creatures in known space, all retreated as far from her as their cells allowed. Okay, I feel like I'm missing something, she said, hands on her hips as she looked up at the observation deck. Is this about humans? Because I can grab another crew member if you need a comparison. No! 3 voices shouted simultaneously through the comm. Sarah jumped slightly. All right, geez, what's going on? Kael'thas decided directness was the only option. Miss Jackson, every predator in this facility recognizes you as an apex threat despite you showing no aggressive behavior, carrying no weapons, and in most cases, them having no direct sensory contact with you. We're trying to understand why. Wait, they're scared of me? Sarah looked genuinely shocked. Terrified, Zilax confirmed. But I'm just walking around. I'm not doing anything. That's precisely the problem, Jotaro explained. You're not doing anything threatening, which from their evolutionary perspective makes you infinitely more dangerous. I'm not following. Jotaro descended from the observation deck, approaching her directly. Tell me about your morning routine. What? What did you do before your shift today? Sarah shrugged. Woke up at HFY, went for a run, grabbed breakfast, showed up for work. Pretty standard. How far did you run? Just a quick 10 kilometers, nothing serious. Jotaro's respiratory system seized. You ran 10 kilometers before a full work shift. Yeah? I mean, I'm training for the Centauri Ultra next month, need to keep my endurance up. The Centauri Ultra, Zilax said faintly over the comm. That's 160 kilometers through variable gravity, Sarah confirmed cheerfully. Should be fun. Did one last year and beat my target time by 40 minutes, so I'm hoping to improve on that. The research team stared at her in collective horror. You ran for 160 kilometers, Kael'thas said slowly. Continuously. Well, there are rest stations every 20 kilometers. You can't just run straight through. Sarah laughed. That would be crazy. Yes, Jotaro agreed weakly. That would be crazy. Anyway, what does my training have to do with the predators acting weird? Jotaro gestured at the containment cells around them. Every creature here evolved as an apex predator in their ecosystem. They hunt through ambush, burst speed, pack coordination, or overwhelming force. None of them evolved to face persistence predation. Okay. You move like a persistence hunter, Miss Jackson. Every step optimized for energy conservation. Breathing pattern steady and efficient. Your resting heart rate indicates a cardiovascular system designed for sustained output over hours or days. To them, you're not moving like a predator. You're moving like the thing that used to hunt their prey species. The thing that doesn't run fast. It just runs forever. Sarah blinked. So they're scared because I went for a jog? You went for a jog and didn't even breathe hard. You climbed 3 levels of station stairs and your heart rate barely elevated. You're standing here having this conversation after 10 kilometers of running this morning, and you're not showing any signs of fatigue whatsoever. Because 10K isn't that far? Sarah said, confused. It is to literally every other species in the galaxy, Zillax burst out over the comm. Humans are the only species that engage in endurance running as recreation. You're evolutionary persistence hunters who now pursue prey that doesn't exist for entertainment. We call it exercise, Sarah said defensively. You call it exercise. They call it the gait pattern of something that followed their ancestors until they collapsed from exhaustion, Jotaro corrected. No threat displays because you don't need to threaten. No weapons because you don't plan to fight. No armor because you're not worried about retaliation. You're just there, moving with mechanical efficiency, and you'll be there tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that until whatever you're following can't run anymore. Sarah processed this for a long moment. Then she started laughing. You're telling me that the galaxy's most dangerous predators are terrified of humans because we like to run? Essentially, yes. Sarah couldn't stop laughing. That's actually kind of hilarious. Wait until I tell the crew back home. They're gonna die. Please don't tell other humans, Kale Thos requested seriously. We're still formulating appropriate protocols. For what? Jogging? For the fact that human endurance athletes register as apex threats to every predator. Species in known space, Jotaro said. We're going to have to completely revise our safety procedures. 3 weeks later, the revised protocols were in place. Human staff were restricted from predator wings during normal operations. The restriction came with an exception clause that Sarah found absolutely hilarious. Humans could be requested for medical procedures when predators were being uncooperative. Turns out, having Sarah walk past a containment cell made even the most aggressive specimens suddenly very willing to accept treatment from non-human medical staff. So I'm basically the threat you use to make them behave, Sarah asked Zillax as she escorted a medical team to treat a Grimwald with an infected wound. We prefer to think of it as behavioral encouragement through presence, Zillax replied diplomatically. You use me as the scary thing. Yes, Sarah grinned. That's amazing. Finally, my marathon training is professionally useful. The Grimwald pressed itself against the far wall as Sarah walked past its reinforced containment. The medical team moved in smoothly, and the predator didn't even growl, too focused on tracking Sarah's movement through the adjacent corridor. It's actually quite effective, Jotaro admitted. We've reduced medical procedure complications by 78%. By making me walk past them. Your presence motivates cooperation. Because they think I'm going to hunt them down over several days until they collapse from exhaustion? When you phrase it like that, it sounds unreasonable. Jotaro, that's literally what you told me 3 weeks ago. The behavioral specialist's manipulators moved in what Sarah had learned was the alien equivalent of an embarrassed shrug. The science is sound. Research papers were already circulating through galactic academic circles. Human persistence, predation. Signatures and their effect on apex predator recognition patterns had become required reading at xenobiology institutions across known space. Other research stations were confirming the same phenomenon, specifically with human endurance athletes, marathon runners, triathletes, ultra-distance specialists, people who moved with that particular efficiency that said, I'm not fast, but I'm not stopping. Sarah found the whole thing endlessly entertaining. She'd started jogging past the predator wings on her way to the gym just to watch the monitoring staff's resigned expressions as every containment cell's occupant tracked her movement with what could only be described as existential dread. "You're enjoying this too much," Zilax told her one evening as she stretched after a 20-kilometer run. "Are you kidding? I spent years having people tell me running was boring. Now I find out it's literally terrifying to apex predators. This is the best thing ever." "You're weaponizing your exercise routine." "I'm just living my life, Doc. Not my fault evolution made predators afraid of cardio." A new human intern arrived. The following week, Emily Chen, fresh from Earth, with the lean build and easy stride of someone who'd done a few half-marathons. Within minutes of her boarding the station, every predator in the facility was oriented toward the docking bay. Zilax found Sarah in the maintenance bay, already laughing at her datapad. "You heard. Got the notification. Another one of us scary persistence hunters arrived." She runs. "I'd guessed. The predators probably did too." Sarah grabbed her toolkit. "Want me to give her the tour? Might as well establish the fear pattern early." "That's not funny." "It's a little funny." They found Emily in orientation, looking confused as her supervisor explained the predator wing restrictions. Sarah leaned against the doorframe, and immediately the Void Stalker 3 levels below shifted position in its cell. "Hey," Sarah called out. "Welcome to the station. Fair warning, the animals don't like us much." Emily looked relieved to see another human. "Yeah, why's that?" "Because we jog." "No, seriously, that's actually why." Emily stared at her blankly. "You'll get used to the weird looks. Also, they'll probably ask you to help with medical procedures. Just walk past the scary ones and they'll cooperate. It's a whole thing." What?" Sarah grinned. "Come on, I'll explain over coffee. It's a great story. Involves evolution, endurance hunting, and apex predators being terrified of humans in running shoes." As they walked toward the cafeteria, Sarah noticed the monitoring staff updating their protocols, adding a second human to their behavioral management roster. On the screens, predators were already recalibrating, recognizing a second persistent threat moving through their facility. Somewhere in the research wing, Kael'thas was updating the station manual with a new section, Human Endurance Athletes as Involuntary Predator Management Tools. Sarah passed a window overlooking one of the external predator habitats. A stellar mauler was tracking her movement, its entire body tense with what could only be described as recognition. Not of her specifically, of what she represented. Something that didn't need armor because it didn't plan to fight. Something that didn't make noise because it didn't need to threaten. Something that just moved with mechanical efficiency, stride after stride, kilometer after kilometer, day after day. The thing that doesn't chase. The thing that follows. Until there's nowhere left to run. Sarah took a sip of her coffee and headed to the gym. She had a 20-kilometer run scheduled, and maybe afterward she'd walk past the predator wings again. Just because the monitoring staff's expressions were absolutely priceless. Behind her, every apex predator in the facility tracked her movement, recognizing in her casual stride the ancient nightmare of prey species across the galaxy. The thing that walks. Forever.